Ambazonia Calling. News, analysis, commentary, opinion, editorials. Ambazonia Calling is a co-production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. Welcome. My name is Ntumfoyn Herbert, and I bring you revolutionary greetings from our studios in Washington, D.C. to all of you, friends of Ambazonia and fellow Ambazonians on Ground Zero and across the globe. Oh, what a week it has been. Over the past 7 days, further demonstration was given that Ambalanders are fighting against principalities. The 85-year-old tyrant of Cameroon filed papers seeking a seventh term as president, alongside no fewer than two sons previously of Ambazonian extraction, Muna and Osi, who are bent on offering some level of credibility to Mr. Bia's electoral fraud. Here, with a wrap-up of this week's horror stories, is Ambazonia Calling's Innocent Child.
The church in Ambazonia is mourning the execution of Reverend Father Alexander Sob, parish priest of Bomaka Mission, Boya Diocese, by Bia occupation forces on Friday in Muyuka. Whereas they have been quick to point out that it was a stray bullet, even coercing the young man who was in the vehicle to say as much, pictures of the assassinated cleric show multiple gun wounds to the chest and arm, indicating that it was anything but stray and that it was not one bullet. Some sources, particularly from La République du Cameroun, are pointing out that he was from the 11th province, a most vile attempt at pitting Bamli case against Ambazonians. Bamenda experienced sporadic gunfire Wednesday between occupation forces of La République du Cameroun and restoration forces of the ADF, who lost a brave volunteer fighter to two by occupation forces. A company of close to 100 La République du Cameroun soldiers with more than 30 armored combat vehicles has been facing incredible resistance from a joint task force of Lebielem, Red Dragons and Tali forces.
If you want to kill me, kill me.
The Dragons got early intelligence of the attack Thursday and reportedly acted in time to avoid getting hemmed in by the occupation forces of La République du Cameroun, who reportedly lost over 18 men. Ambazonia has been facing renewed and intensified internet and power warfare from colonial La République du Cameroun. Excepting the main towns of Bamenda, Boya, Kumba, and Bali, most secondary towns and villages have been suffering from indiscriminate and random outages, including water supply that many fear may be poisoned. For 93 days, from January through April of 2017, the government of Cameroon initiated the discriminatory policy as a measure to force oneness of Cameroon, but only establish the divisibility of Cameroon and Ambazonia. Surviving family of the students executed in cold blood in Bamli last week and hospital staff speaking on condition of anonymity are reporting that government of Cameroon is demanding that they pay ransom to pick up the mangled corpses of their beloved ones. Families are reporting that they are forced to falsely sign off that the ADF forces are responsible for the killings. Midway into a one-week ultimatum issued by the Joint Command of Ambazonia Defense Forces asking that all parliamentarians and senators from Ambazonia resign from Bia's rubber stamp assembly, the dishonorable Bandam of the SDF found a back route to go and pack out the rest of his clothes and flee from his house in Bangui. In an interview with the local press in Bamenda, the SDF frontman literally thanked Bia for cancelling legislative elections. Up to 9 journalists, mostly Ambazonians, remain under lockup in Bafoussam 2 weeks after they were arrested at the end of a UN-organized workshop. Police are yet to give a reason for the arrest, detention, and torture of Macmillan Ambe, Frida Latina Voma, Richard Toga Jato, Nelson Mokum Juni, Magdalene Fawa Agatha, Lucy Bisong Aisame, Eileen Kembong Sama, Divine Yambot, and Tim Chiayu. These reporters add to Thomas Awa and Mancho BBC, father of the Coffin Revolution, who were abducted by La République du Cameroun and condemned to long prison terms by the Kangaroo military in Yaoundé. Biya's British forces of occupation gunned down a business tycoon and owner of the popular Miss Bright Hotel in Boya. Mr. Felix Tantongang was allegedly killed for denying to support a Tanganji scam, aka Humanitarian Relief Fund for Northwest and Southwest. Some say government accused him of supporting Amba restoration forces. The movement for the restoration of the independence of Southern Cameroons, MORISC, member of the Ambazonia Recognition and Collaboration Council, ARC, has expressed strong regret over the mild statement issued by the U.S. State Department regarding a surreal video of the horrific extrajudicial killings of two mothers and their kids by the Specialized Rapid Intervention Brigade of the Cameroon Army. It would be recalled that the U.S. has, together with Israel, been training elements of this specialized task force to fight against the Muslim insurgency Boko Haram in the north of Cameroon.
Well, the conflicts between government troops and Ambazonia separatists is also forcing many women to take on roles usually left to men, including digging graves to bury the dead.
Dr. Cho Eyaba, leader of the AGC and commander of the ADF, is joining voices with the local population of Wum in their strong condemnation of the beheading of a paramilitary officer of La République du Cameroun. The mutilated remains were on the streets Wednesday with no restoration group taking ownership of the gruesome sight. In the meantime, a credible audio on social media has stated that the killing is the handiwork of La République du Cameroun in order to frame the local population. It is the same tactic that La République du Cameroun used in the southern zone as they prepared to burn whole villages. Patrick Ndango, the brave Ambazonian who shot and smuggled out a video capturing the subhuman conditions in which they were imprisoned in La République du Cameroun, is seriously sick and being denied treatment in Kondangi prison, where an alleged outbreak of cholera has been reported. The taking of funds and chiefs as hostages remains a controversial hot potato across Ambazonia. Please continue to stream in for the release of the chiefs of Musaka and Wokaka in the southern zone, as well as the Fawn of Mejang in the northern zone. The Fawn of Mejang has been in captivity for several months. In foreign news, sources say the Federal Republic of Nigeria has turned down a request by French President Emmanuel Macron to assist Cameroon with thousands of troops in their fight against Ambazonia. Meantime, China has donated $8 million to support the crackdown by La République du Cameroun's army of Ambazonia nationalists. Reuters is reporting the arrest of 4 soldiers suspected of shooting dead 2 women and their children in the far north province of Cameroon. Its Minister of Communication, Issa Shiroma, blasted the video last week as fake. Finally, 20 brain-dead political party leaders Friday in La République du Cameroun made history as they all sat on a podium to jointly endorse Biya as their candidate of choice at the upcoming presidential elections on October 7th.
Nous sommes encore en plein dans la sorcellerie et je parle au Camerounais.
Merci beaucoup. Je rappelle que le terme sorcier utilisé par M. Nkubondo, il en est responsable.
Speaking at the event, El Haj Lawan Bako of the United Democratic Party said Biya knows where the shoe pinches and trusts him to steer the Titanic right into an abyss. Innocent Chia, Ambazonia Calling.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
Still ahead in this edition, we have the Devil Unmasked with Professor Emmanuel Tatamenta. We have a winner for the Ntumfoyn of the week. And we are not done until we have heard our letter to Joshua. So stay tuned, kick back, relax, and enjoy Ambazonia Calling. This week was the 6th anniversary of the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi and the beginning of the descent of Libya to hell, of course. But this week also marked the 100th birthday of Nelson Madiba Mandela, a great man who fought violently for the oppressed people of South Africa. Here in his honor is a great song for Madiba only.
Asimbonanga, Mandela thina laphe khona, laphe hleli khona. Asimbonanga, Mandela thina laphe khona, laphe hleli khona. Asimbonanga, Mandela thina laphe khona, laphe hleli khona. Kithi hey wena, hey wena, nawe sofika nini la sakhona. Kithi hey wena, nawe sofika nini la sakhona. Asimbonanga, Mandela thina laphe khona, laphe hleli khona. Asimbonanga, Mandela thina laphe khona, laphe hleli khona.
This week, Human Rights Watch issued a one-sided pro-government report on the Cameroons during a session which they launched at the United Nations headquarters in New York, along with press availability. The whole thing was carefully staged, with Human Rights Watch offering the chance at the end of the session for a Cameroon government official from the delegation to the United Nations to take the floor. Prevented from doing so by United Nations staff, Human Rights Watch shamelessly insisted on assuming the role of public relations officer for the criminal regime by pointing out to reporters that the human rights report, supposedly independent, already included a response from the colonial government of Cameroon. Here to present the official rebuttal from Ambazonia Calling is Chrissa Cunningham and Tanya Malaika.
During the entire oral presentation by the New York-based organization, it was hard to watch HRW officials without thinking that the organization may be in the pocket of the colonial regime of Cameroon, an official sponsor, France.
One thing Human Rights Watch can be credited with is with finding the right title for the report. The title they use is, "This Violence Can Be Stopped." And no one agrees more than Ambazonians. Yes, the violence in Ambazonia can be stopped by doing things that Human Rights Watch seems to be too compromised to bother to recommend.
This violence can be stopped by asking the colonial government of Cameroon to withdraw its occupation forces from Ambazonia.
This violence can be stopped by asking the Cameroon government to put an end to their scorched earth policy, to end mass arrest, torture, maiming, execution, disappearances, and massacres of Ambazonians.
This violence can be stopped by ensuring that Ambazonians have their own government, that their right to self-determination is upheld, and that their independence, approved by the United Nations General Assembly, is upheld.
This violence can be stopped by ensuring that organizations like Human Rights Watch, who should perhaps be investigated by the FBI and IRS for possible bribe-taking, that they do not mislead the world into thinking that the calls for an independent Ambazonia somehow started only in 2016.
This violence can be stopped by ensuring that the carefully stage-managed game played by Human Rights Watch in a hall at the United Nations with journalists like Matthew Lee kept out from cross-examining and showcasing how many lies are embedded in the report.
This violence can be stopped by recognizing, as the executive director of the Africa Division at Human Rights Watch herself says, that it is the colonial government of Cameroon that resorted to violence, which then invited corresponding violence.
This violence can be stopped by the colonial government if it stops its indiscriminate attacks on civilians, hundreds of thousands of whom have been displaced as a result, as nearly 100 of their villages have been burnt to the ground.
This violence can be stopped if Human Rights Watch is not so naive as to believe that access to lawyers and family members for abducted Ambazonian leaders is some sort of progress in a country where the government thinks it has the right of life and death over citizens of another country unless they renounce their newly restored nationality.
This violence can be stopped if Human Rights Watch can bother to do its homework and to tell the world that it is the criminal government of Cameroon which has rejected dialogue from the very beginning, choosing the violence of guns against peaceful demonstrators, and even rejecting dialogue handed down in a court ruling by an African Union court.
This violence can be stopped if Human Rights Watch can only recognize that Ambazonian parents have a right to refuse to send their children to schools where they are uneducated and then targeted, raped, killed, violated, and all other such atrocities.
This violence can be stopped if Human Rights Watch researchers could begin from the very beginning by telling the whole truth to the world and recognizing that schools were closed only after the colonial forces of Cameroon invaded the university, brutalized, raped, and killed students.
This violence can be stopped, but it is not only violence to the body. Parents of Ambazonian children have a right, which Human Rights Watch would apparently like to see taken away, to prevent a colonial regime from indoctrinating their children and doing violence to their tender brains by suggesting that they are less of a human being just because they are Ambazonians, not French-speaking Cameroonians.
This violence can be stopped if Human Rights Watch was less in the pocket of the government of Cameroon and could use simple common sense to conclude that a government which burns down entire villages, nearly 100 villages, including burning elderly in their homes, is fully capable of also burning down schools.
This violence can be stopped if organizations like Human Rights Watch could recognize and tell the entire world that the first schools were burnt down long before any self-defense groups were formed by Ambazonians.
This violence can be stopped and will certainly not be escalated into communal-level violence if organizations are not as irresponsible as Human Rights Watch is in suggesting that the violence involves Ambazonians attacking Francophones of Bamileke descent.
This violence can be stopped and will be stopped if organizations like Human Rights Watch stop printing lame excuses provided by a criminal regime to the effect that the violence by its colonial forces is perpetrated by a few bad apples. The violence is systemic. It is ordered by the criminal regime, which speaks only one language, the language of violence.
This violence can be stopped if organizations do not follow the wrong lead of Human Rights Watch, which is suggesting that the root cause of the problem, which is annexation and recolonization, should be overlooked in favor of things like resuming school and victimizing pro-independence leaders and fighters, and using the United Nations Security Council to treat a matter that should be solved by the United Nations General Assembly to go before the Security Council, where France is waiting to use its veto power to impose colonial rule on Ambazonians.
This violence can be stopped if officials of the Commonwealth and the United Nations focus on implementing their own resolutions regarding Ambazonia, instead of accepting golden statues that far too many consider bribes.
This violence can be stopped if international media and objective human rights organizations, not just those brought and paid for by the criminal regime in Yaoundé, are allowed unrestricted access to the Cameroonians and allowed to independently research and publish their stories.
This violence can be stopped if Human Rights Watch is prevented from feeding the world with the lie that somehow the criminal government of Cameroon is perfectly ready to engage.
This violence can be stopped and will be stopped when true transparency will allow organizations like the FBI and IRS to dig into and reveal what exactly is going on between Human Rights Watch, the Cameroonian government, and the delegation of Cameroon to the United Nations.
When it comes to the millions of victims of the forced recolonization and annexation and military occupation and abuse by La République du Cameroun, what Human Rights Watch has done with its most recent report is the equivalent of a counselor telling a woman who has been repeatedly raped that if she had offered just a little less resistance to the rapist, if she had not resisted the rapist, she would not be as badly bruised as she is. Shame on you, Human Rights Watch. It is hard not to imagine that you have been bought, that you are in the pocket of the colonial government of Cameroon, of the Cameroon delegation to the United Nations, which you were struggling to introduce during the launch of your report.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
Welcome to our segment, The Devil Unmasked, The Truth Out, with Professor Tata Menta. Let me start, Professor Tata Menta. I have you on the phone. What are we to understand about all these invitations that have been extended to the grandmasters, all these principalities who are coming into Cameroon?
Well, we understand in reality that all those calls, especially what they call spirituality, European spirituality, is what they have used all along as an instrument of capturing Africans in particular, or those they wanted to colonize, or those they wanted to enslave. So this time around, they have come because the BI is a member of the court and he believes in rule by killing, or what we call autocracy. So he has invited them to come and intimidate people so that they should understand that in case anybody jokes, he will be swallowed up in like manner and his blood will be sponged away as they do it all over the whole place, whether through motor accidents or otherwise.
And so the fear that our people are having that, some of these motor accidents and strange killings, beheadings are all linked to this?
And that is exactly what you think, because there are some of the videos which show exactly somebody sucking the blood of a little child just immediately after the ceremonies in the so-called Unity Palace or whatever they call it. And then you see a woman in Oku who is being mutilated in like manner. You see a policeman in womb, somebody of the Special Operations Unit who has been beheaded, and you see many of those atrocities being committed to intimidate people.
And we are beginning to see some really unbelievable video and some gruesome incidents, some killings.
Well, those are the normal tactics of Biya's autocracy, as I said before. So what he is doing now is because he is really desperate. He is desperate. Look at just in the indices of desperation. For example, they come up and say China has given military aid of about 5 billion francs to Cameroon. They say Germany has given 2 warships and all the like. If they were sure of themselves, why would they need even to be going around getting grandmasters and all the like? It is an indication that the regime is desperate. That is why they're sending soldiers. Some of them are going as sacrificial lambs because they will be slaughtered in like manner, and then they will turn around to accuse the Amba boys, whereas the Amba boys are not involved in some of those heinous crimes. And you just see their treasury is empty, and that's why you can see them announcing 59 recruitment examinations. You already see that those are indications that they are desperate. The Biya regime is desperate. You will see even how he signed a decree appointing secretaries generals in ministries. Why? Because he is desperate. He wants people to go as sacrificial lambs to their respective areas and even be slaughtered that they are campaigning for him. So it is all about Biya. It is not about what it calls La République du Cameroun. It's about Biya and nothing else but Biya.
La République du Cameroun spent another week trying everything to deny any association or responsibility for the extrajudicial executions in northern Cameroon. Do you think they can be believed by anyone?
As soon as the video went viral, the first thing which Jailbird Issa Chiroma said was that, and the other ruffian, they call him military spokesman, since they have spokesmen all over the whole place. They said it was a video of 2014. Shortly after that, they said it was a video of 2015. Shortly after that, they said, oh, he was not even in Cameroon. And that another aspect of it was that these fellows were not wearing Cameroonian military uniforms and all the like. And the Amnesty International has credible evidence demonstrating that what they used to mow down those women and babies were Zaslava M21 guns from Serbia. They cannot deny such evidence. They have it. Then, when such evidence started mounting, they quickly rushed to indicate that, oh, they had arrested the 4 people. If you're denying that those people did not do, why arrest them? Why arrest them? So that tells you the desperate situation in which the regime finds itself.
Human Rights Watch put out a report this week, basically helping La République du Cameroun to avoid discussing the need to ensure full implementation of United Nations Resolution 1608.
Resolution 1608 is what they have been running away from. Even the fact that in 1990, it was very clear from the United Nations report, which for Ntumfoyn Godidinka got, that they indicated that there was no way in which the regime of Biya could be claiming a right to the territory of southern Cameroon. And all that was left was that those who are sitting in Yaoundé in the name of representatives of southern Cameroonians should get out of that assembly, and then it will be declared that we have our seat at the United Nations. But the blokes are still going around in Yaoundé, and that is what Biya is trying to shunt or to shove aside Resolution 1608 of the General Assembly in order to continue to lord it over us. And that's why we say we cannot accept it.
A member of the colonial government, who shall remain unnamed, issued a letter this week that was circulated on social media, in which he or she was claiming that they are hostages of the colonial regime. Also this week we saw a member of parliament, Honorable Joseph Mbandam, saying he was fleeing from his deserted village for Yaoundé, for the capital, colonial capital. And he said, he was running away because there was no one else left in his village. What do you say to people like this who are cutting and running?
Well, with people like Mbandam or Bella Moki and all those fellows who say they are citizenship of La République, or those who are running for so-called presidential elections in a foreign country, I think all that we can tell them is good luck. Because first of all, they are only going to be caressing the evil elections of Paul Biya. They can never win any election. They can never. They know like that. Frundi tried it until he got fed up, he got tired, and then passed the buck to some other person to be trying what he knows that he will never succeed. So if those fellows are not strong enough to stand up and tell Biya that enough is enough, they are wasting their time. They will be overtaken.
Ambazonian journalists have been arrested in Bafoussam. Ambazonians have been rounded up in Douala, and there are those Ambazonians in the military who are being ostracized within the army, within the gendarmerie. There are dark days there ahead of us. Can anyone believe that Mr. Biya really wants peace if he says he does?
They had been told that they should go home where they belong. They are in foreign land. They do not have residence permit in La République. Let them go home. So those who are serving in La République's army understand that they are not even seen, and they are only being used as cannon fodder. They will soon start massacring them and accusing Amba boys. That is very clear. That's what is going to be happening now. So any of them who do not want to heed any of such advice should be a fool, and anything happening to him should not blame anybody. Because as we know, as we all know, cannot be smoking the pipe of peace today. Peace does not exist in his vocabulary at all. It's blood spilling. That is all he knows. That is his religion.
Thank you very much, Prof, for talking to us, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you too, and thanks for our listeners. Bye.
This week, Ambazonia Calling is brought to you by themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
Does the African Union have any use other than being a club of dictators looking out for each other? I pose the question to Ambazonia Calling's Barrister Manjong Jutambe.
Most Africans have long concluded that the African Union and its predecessor, the Organization of African Unity, are unable, unwilling, or completely incompetent when it comes to organizing timely interventions to prevent, mitigate, or resolve violent conflicts. The widely shared perception among Africans is that the African Union is nothing but a club of the world's worst tyrants engaged in protecting each other. Prime Minister Simon Achidi could have been describing the African Union when he said, "Politics Nanjangi, you scratch my back, I scratch your back." Unlike the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, the African Union has generally stood idly by, as even the minutest sparks of disagreement ends up in deadly bloodbaths. The African Union has set out lofty ideals which it fulfills only to the extent that a mirage on a patch of highway tarmac is indeed a pool of water. The African Union's objective, the promotion of peace, security, and stability are prerequisites for the implementation of the organization's other goals of achieving development and integration fits the above characterization. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to come to the realization that promotion of the trinity of peace, security, and stability can never be realized devoid of justice and fairness. The best approach to conflict resolution adopted by the African Union has been to hope that violent conflicts will resolve themselves, or that people will kill each other until there's no one else left to be killed. In practical terms, it consists of turning a blind eye to hotbeds in the African Union's backyard, such as Mr. Biya's genocide on Ambazonians in an attempt to suppress their independence quest. Such a strategy is at best misguided, ill-informed, and frankly unfortunate. A few months ago at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., I was privileged to meet with the chairperson of the African Union, Mr. Musa Faki Muhammad. I asked Mr. Musa Faki about the reluctance of his organization to intervene and resolve the Ambazonia question. He dodged the question, promising that his office will get back to us. We are still waiting. The most recent African Union General Assembly summit ended without a mention of Ambazonia, at least not in General Assembly and definitely not in resolutions adopted. Mr. Faki Muhammad's visit to Yaoundé soon after the end of the summit speaks volumes about the concerns that the dictators have. However, doing so only in harsh terms and with Mr. Biya alone offers another illustration that the tyrants have taken the African Union hostage and are only concerned about looking out for each other. The timing of his visit is even more troubling, considering that there are claims of Chadian soldiers assisting Mr. Biya's marauding army in unleashing his genocide in Ambazonia. Notwithstanding, we at Ambazonia Calling believe that Ambazonians should not lose hope in the African Union. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that the African Union usually drags its legs in reacting to such situations within the continent. However, when the time comes, its reactions and decisions can be very surprising for the dictators at fault. The Kingdom of Morocco self-expelled from the African Union after the organization admitted Western Sahara. Ethiopia's active lobbying of the African Union and its role as host country did not prevent the organization from recognizing Eritrea. The same can be said of Sudan and the independence of South Sudan. It is only a matter of time before the African Union eats humble pie and recognizes Ambazonia too. For that to happen, though, all Ambazonians must double down, remain steadfast and fired up, commit anew to the struggle, and engage on a worldwide campaign that will shame the African Union into falling in line on the side of the justified cause of the sovereign people of Ambazonia. It is only by doing the right thing that the African Union can prove that it can bite, not merely bark. Given the ongoing genocidal violence in Ambazonia, the need for action by the African Union cannot be overstated. In fact, the fierce urgency of now can never be overemphasized. Manjang Jut Ambe, reporting for Ambazonia Calling.
Winning recognition will take more than just demonstrating in favor of independence or winning battles on the war front. It will take diplomacy and a commitment to check off each of the boxes expected by the international community. One of the required boxes is to prove that our people abide by United Nations resolutions, and that notably a majority of them can be shown as supportive of independence and peaceful separation from La République du Cameroun. Jude Ozugen reports.
The right of self-determination presupposes the free and genuine expressions of the will of the people in question. This precondition is reflected in the wording of UN General Assembly Resolution 1514 and confirmed by the International Court of Justice Advisory Opinion on the Western Sahara case. Passed on December 14, 1960, the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples orders the UN to take immediate step in trust and non-self-governing territories or all other territories which have not yet attained independence to transfer all powers to the people of those territories without any conditions or reservations, in accordance with their freely expressed will and desires, in order to enable them to enjoy complete independence and freedoms. Let me repeat some key words in that resolutions. The resolution orders the UN to transfer all powers to the people of the territories, not just some of the powers. It calls on the UN to ensure that all colonized people enjoy complete independence and freedom, not partial independence. The will of the people can be obtained through the organization of a plebiscite, a referendum, or elections. This right is exercised at genuine periodic elections conducted by universal and equal suffrage and by secret ballots, and in circumstances which guarantee the free expressions of the will of the electors. It is important to stress that there is no limit to the exercise of self-determination. Proponent of an elusive one and indivisible Ethiopia, a one and indivisible Morocco, a one and indivisible Sudan, a one and indivisible Indonesia, found out what proponents of the elusive one and indivisible Cameroon are bound to find out. The people of Southern Cameroon did not foreclose on their right to self-determination after the plebiscite of February 11, 1961. In other words, no plebiscite can justify the maintenance of the master-slave relationship that Ambazonia has been subjected to in the God-forsaken union with the Republic of Cameroon. Self-determination is to be wielded continuously, for no human right can be exercised only once. Self-determination is an ongoing open-ended process without a point of closure. There can be no valid reason for limiting any people's right to the exercise of self-determination, just as there can be no such reasons to limit the practice of democracy to a single election. Ambazonians can do more than just complain about not being heard. Ambazonians can organize their own elections. For example, aligning our vote prior to Biya's sham of an election on October 7 could afford us the chance to demonstrate our determination to uphold our right to self-determination. We could use such an election to formally send a clear message to the international community that we want out of this God-forsaken union. It is a prerequisite and one of the provisions of Resolution 1514 under Principle 7 and 8. Elections are particularly important for Ambazonians because we must not presume that pressure groups and liberation movements, all of them unelected, represent the will of the people. We should not continue to confuse our revolution with those revolutions whose aims was to unseat a dictatorial government within the same country. Ours is aimed at restoring the independence of our country and winning recognition for it. That is why it is important to prove that a majority of our people stand with movements that are not represented in any form of an elected government. For a quick fact check of history, the leaders of Congress which proclaimed America's independence in 1776 were all elected. The leaders of Southern Cameroon Revolution, which led to our quitting Nigeria in 1953, were all elected. The leaders of the successful Purple Revolution, which led to the formation of the Czech and Slovak republics, were all elected. In our time, and fighting alongside us, the people of Catalonia who seek separation from Spain did not stop at pointing out that the people support their movement, giving the crowd at rallies. Instead, they set out to organize elections to prove that a majority are for a breakaway from Spain. Realizing the power that the outcome of elections will have and their binding force, officials in Spain disrupted the elections, fully aware that it will be near impossible for them to reverse the outcome. We Ambazonians cannot run away from our shadow forever. At some point, we must conform to international standards by doing the right thing. We must use a referendum, the sooner the better, to prove to the world and any doubting Thomases that an overwhelming majority of our people are for outright independence and peaceful separation from the Republic of Cameroon. This is Jude Agua Ozugen from Ambazonia Calling.
Should Ambazonians worry if they are called Anglophones or called Southern Cameroonians? Should they worry about being called Northwesterners or Southwesterners? You bet. Don't let anyone play Shakespeare back to you. What is in the name? Everything is in the name. Here is Innocentia on why every Ambazonian must remain proudly Ambazonian.
There is no doubt that there has been a radical transformation of minds over the last 2 years from those of us who would have rather swallowed 1,000 razor blades than pronounce the name Ambazonia. Questions were not only asked of its source, presumptions were made and outlandish conspiracy theories hashed. Overall, it could be said that the concerns were a reflection of the people's collective ignorance of their geography, as it told its author, the unrelenting advocate for a free Ambazonia and president of the Republic of Ambazonia, ROA, Fongoji Dinka, that the sales task force needed to be hired to make Ambazonia a household name. Time and opportunity eventually came to the rescue, and now even Yaoundé is unavoidably making mention of it. The U.S. Congress has statements and other documents that have been submitted to it, with Ambazonia stated as the successor state to the UN Trust Territory formerly known as Southern Cameroons. As with individuals or corporate entities, a name change generally signifies a new identity, a departure from the old to something new or someone new, like a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Ambazonians are breaking away from the bondage and are, with a new name, asserting a privilege that La République du Cameroun could not afford, that of naming itself like a truly independent people, much like parents name their kids with attendant prayers for who they become in future. Ambazonians are telling Cameroon that they were never shrimps on the dinner table for the Portuguese who named the land Rio dos Cameros, or River of Shrimps, a name that has kept the country at the dinner table for France and informed the chop broke pot fang beti mentality of President Biya and cohorts. Without a doubt, and as a matter of law, it is either at the point of recognition or after international recognition that a name change from Southern Cameroons to Ambazonia can officially be submitted and adopted by the United Nations. Think of it like a child who no longer wants to bear the family name. While waiting for the competent authority to make it a reality, that child continues to be known by the family name, and it would certainly be preposterous, deceptive, and dishonorable for anyone to surreptitiously misinform the world via Wikipedia that there is someone known as president of that entity that has neither had an election or been recognized. Innocent Chia for Ambazonia Calling.
For more stories from around the world, go to the World Wide Web at themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
The competition was tough this week for the crown of Ntumfoyn of the week, but as usual, only 3 contenders could be included among the 1 winner and 2 runners-up. In third position this week was the chairperson of the African Union, Chadian-born Dr. Musa Faki Mohammed, who wasted a trip to Cameroon only to end in Yaoundé on a schedule which featured more item 11s than ever. Dinner upon arrival, breakfast on rising, and another meal just before leaving, in between snacks and cocktails served during an event at the Yaoundé School of International Relations. The African Union boss did what the African Union does best. He presented and pretended that no problems existed in Cameroon. Mention of the calls for decolonizations by Ambazonians came up just so its existence could be denied. Sadly, Dr. Musa Faki Mohammed, who claims to be a Pan-Africanist, committed to building a bigger unit of Africa, did not pledge to make sure that his native Republic of Chad, which used to be part of German Cameroon with capital in Buea, will resubmit to colonial rule under Ambazonia from out of Buea. He is our 3rd runner-up to the Ntumfoyn of the week. After last week's master performance in stupidity by Ntumfoyn of the decade, Franklin Jume, we did not think that someone would be so anxious to copy the same line, but that was not to know who Barrister Lisinge is. And he did not miss a chance this week, playing the lawyer who grew up loving okra soup, or Lawyer Okra Soup we should call him. In mounting his hatred for northern zoners, the okra soup left in his mouth from the days of childhood came through in the childishness the man displayed, winning the runner-up for this week's Ntumfoyn of the week. But unavoidably, should it be said, the trophy of Ntumfoyn of the week went undisputably to Honorable Joseph Mbandam of the SDF, who announced before television cameras this week that he was quitting his village, torn apart by colonial forces. The SDF member of parliament said only a grand total of 5 inhabitants were left in his native Batibo, which is according to him completely deserted, thanks to the violence visited on his people by La République du Cameroun. Honorable Joseph Mbandam should not be complaining. He was one of those in parliament who fully supported the adoption, signing into law by colonial President Paul Biya of the law on terrorism, which is being used today by the colonialists to victimize his people. We remember criticizing Mbandam over his support for that law, and warning that a time will come like today when he would wish he did not support passage of that law. Alas, the member of parliament who never learned that what goes around comes around is now facing his own music. Honorable Joseph Mbandam is this week's winner of the Ntumfoyn of the week.
Music is a universal language, a very powerful tool that is used for many purposes. As the Ambazonian restoration moves on, beneath the chatter, angst for lost ones, and the general noise by pundits, close and far from ground zero, there is also the unstoppable current of music, old, new, and everything in between. In times of peace or war, there is always an element of music. However, there are a few questions about music and its role in a restoration process. What is the current state of the art in Ambazonia? What role Ambazonian artists, musicians, creative citizens can play to help abate the trauma faced by our people at this time? Music is also an important item of identity. Ambazonia is proud of its sons and daughters who have produced musical and artistic content against all odds, namely the absence of academic institutions for the arts and music, and the dysfunction of a government system that has been unable to define policy that will permit an artist's registration and rights framework. And that is not news. Here is the news. A tune by a bona fide Ambazonian from Ntumfoyn County. He calls it What a Mess.
Everything will be gone. I'll be watching like a stranger in the night. I'll be standing watching.
And there you go. That was Willie Ntumfoyn from Ntumfoyn County, Ambazonia. The future of creative art and music in Ambazonia is a promise that must deliver. This is the monk from Ibalikumato, Verjikov himself for Ambazonia Calling.
Here is our letter to Joshua.
Dear Joshua, what am I hearing? Did I hear right? Is it true that you arrested the 4 soldiers who reportedly executed the 2 women and 2 children in northern Cameroon? And did I also hear from your House of Lies, CRTV, and others of the same calling that you arrested the 4 last Sunday? You really want the world to believe that even as you call the execution fake news and claim that the army uniforms were not those of your Kamamburu? You want the world to believe that while you were busy trying to make the government of Mali blamed for these executions, that you somehow also arrested the perpetrators? We are not that gullible, Joshua. The world is not that gullible. Have you heard of sense pass king? I mean, you are not sense pass king. Since you and your government have learned to lie without stopping, our people have learned to listen without believing. Let me help you out here with the next lie you may be hashing right now. Next, you are going to tell the world that you have made them an example for others, right? You will tell the world that you court-martialed them before one of those your kangaroo courts. A judge reading from a decree you would have signed in advance will find them guilty as charged, and you will send in a hangman who will tie them to a post and execute them, right? What are you doing, Joshua? What you are doing is pure, unadulterated scapegoatism. You give the orders for soldiers to kill, and then when they do it, then you pull them out as the unfortunate ones and you execute. Look, the one person who deserves to be arrested, to be thrown in jail, to be tried for his war crimes and crimes against humanity is you, Joshua, not scapegoats like those soldiers. Why arrest poor soldiers who are simply following orders when the real commanders go scot-free? It is you, Joshua, who gave the orders. You bought the weapons. You wrote the check for those soldiers. You congratulated them week after week on what your spokesman, Issa Chiruma, described as their extraordinary professionalism. The world cannot and will not be fooled, Joshua. Everyone knows why you are in a tight spot this time around. You are doing something about this simply because the soldiers who carried out your orders were foolish enough to film the execution and to broadcast them on social media. When they carried out your orders and burned Mami Api alive in her home in Kwakwa, did you arrest or punish anyone? When they followed your instructions and beheaded Sam Sawyer and 4 of his colleagues in Bello, did anyone get arrested? When they burned down nearly 100 villages, did anyone get arrested? It is just because shit has hit the fan. And a shit no white blast like you is panicking, Joshua. You are afraid that the International Tribunal in Cameroon will be constituted quicker than you had anticipated. That is why you want the world to believe that you are doing something about cleaning up after your own mess. It is simply because the soldiers failed to follow the orders given by your minister delegate in charge of the gendarmerie. The orders you have given are for soldiers to commit these crimes against humanity, so long as they do not capture those crimes on cell phone video. That is why your minister told the soldiers to stop filming your atrocity crimes. I have a question for you. When are you going to grow up and take responsibility for anything, Joshua? Your soldiers executed 6 people at the SDF Foundation rally in Bamenda, and you claimed that the victims were trampled to death. Remember that? You executed thousands as part of your commandement opérationnel in Douala, and claimed that all victims were armed bandits. You fired at and killed hundreds of Ambazonians on the 22nd of September and the 1st of October 2017, and claimed that the 3 branches they were waving were AK-47s. You assassinated the Bishop of Bafia and hatched a big fat lie about the bishop drowning in the Senegal River. You have not hesitated to abduct your own soldiers, policemen, and members of your colonial administration in Ambazonia, whom you have killed in cold blood and tried to blame on Ambazonian liberation forces. Were the thousands of soldiers and citizens of Northeast descent executed on the road to Mbalmayo killed by stray bullets, Joshua? On Friday, you assassinated yet another Catholic priest, Reverend Father Alexander Sop, God rest his soul, and you were quick to come out with a statement claiming that Reverend Father Sop, the former Catholic Education Secretary and parish priest of Bomaka-Boya, was killed by a stray bullet. You know the shame, Joshua. Why would the world's most professional army, as Issa Chiruma calls it, why would such a professional army be shooting stray bullets at a priest? Why should anyone believe that Reverend Father Sop was killed by a stray bullet? Was Reverend Father Sop walking through a shooting range of your very professional army when the so-called stray bullet hit him? Oh, I was forgetting that you have transformed every single square meter of Ambazonia into your colonial army's shooting range. Like every other Ambazonian, Reverend Father Sop was just another target, albeit a high-priced target. Lest the world forget, the record should show that Father Sop was one of the few clergy. He was one of those who was dragged to court along with some bishops and the moderators of the Baptist and Presbyterian churches for keeping Catholic schools shut down, and by so doing, providing support to the strike by Ambazonian teachers and parents. We know your wicked self, Joshua. We know that you had a good reason to kill Reverend Father Sop. You did not hit him with a stray bullet any more than you hit Sam Sawyer with a stray knife in that unholy beheading. You did not hit him with a stray bullet any more than you hit Mami Api or Kwakwa with stray fire. No, Joshua. You have drawn blood and are bent on drawing so much more blood that by the time you're done, adding the names Adolf Hitler to your middle name would be a basic requirement for accurate identification. What is wrong with you, Joshua? Have you got no balls? Can you not own up to crimes you commit? Was all that seminary education just wasted on you? When will you have enough innocent blood? Did the 2 grandmasters request the blood of a Catholic priest also? Even Satan does not want you for a friend, Joshua. And you know what? I cannot blame the devil.
From our studios here in Washington, D.C., our producer is Jeff McCoy. Our music today is from Ken Wanaku, the monk from Balikumato, William Ford, an Ambassador of Blessed Memory, Eric Matisse on the web at soundimage.org, and Prince Ajua Alemanji of Ajam Sonic Kitron, USA. Ambazonia Calling is a joint production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. You can find us on the web at www.themissionstribune.com, www.compassfreepress.com, and www.africafreedomnetwork.com. Next Sunday is another day. Until then, keep the spirit, keep the faith, keep up the fight for justice and independence for Ambazonia. Stay Amba strong.